Markus Zusak's The Book Thief, first published in 2005, is a historical novel set in Nazi Germany during World War II. The story follows Liesel Meminger, a young girl who finds comfort and meaning in books while growing up amid war, persecution, and loss. Narrated by Death, the novel presents Liesel's experiences alongside the lives of the ordinary people around her as Nazi rule transforms their community. Zusak's literary style is poetic, unconventional, and highly symbolic, combining fragmented narration, vivid imagery, foreshadowing, and frequent interruptions from Death's distinctive perspective. Words and storytelling themselves become central elements of the novel. Its major themes include the power of language, mortality, friendship, love, courage, war, prejudice, loss, and the capacity for both cruelty and compassion within human beings. The Book Thief remains important for its unusual perspective on life in Nazi Germany, and its exploration of how words can be used both to manipulate and destroy, and to comfort, resist, and preserve humanity. The story starts with Death introducing himself as the narrator. He explains that he carries away souls, notices colors in the sky, and has crossed paths with a girl he calls the Book Thief 3 different times. The first time is on a train, where he takes the soul of a young boy while the boy's sister watches in shock. The second time is years later, beside a crashed airplane, when a boy places a teddy bear near a dying pilot. The third time is after bombs destroy a German street, leaving the girl alive in the rubble with a book in her hands. The girl is Liesel Meminger. She is 9 years old when she travels with her mother and younger brother Werner toward Munich, where she is meant to live with foster parents. During the journey, Werner dies. Liesel and her mother stop to bury him, and at the graveside Liesel steals her first book after one of the gravediggers drops it in the snow. She cannot really read it yet, but the book becomes tied to grief, loss, and the beginning of her new life. Liesel is taken to Himmel Street in Molking, where Hans and Rosa Hubermann become her foster parents. Rosa is harsh, loud, and quick with insults, while Hans is gentle, patient, and warm. Liesel is frightened at first, especially after losing her brother and being separated from her mother, whose illness and suspected communist ties have made her disappear from Liesel's life. Slowly, Hans wins Liesel's trust. He plays the accordion, teaches her how to roll cigarettes, and comforts her when nightmares of Werner wake her in the night. At school, Liesel struggles because she is far behind in reading. She is placed with younger children, which embarrasses her. At home, Hans discovers the stolen gravedigger's book and begins teaching her the alphabet by writing on sandpaper. Their lessons grow into a bond. Reading becomes more than a school skill for Liesel. It becomes a way to survive fear, understand pain, and build a private world inside a violent public one. Liesel also meets Rudy Steiner, the boy next door. Rudy is energetic, loyal, reckless, and fascinated by Jesse Owens, the black Olympic runner who won gold medals in Berlin. Before Liesel arrives, Rudy has already shocked the neighborhood by covering himself in charcoal and running around the track in imitation of Owens. Liesel and Rudy argue at first, but they soon become best friends. Rudy constantly asks Liesel for a kiss, and she always refuses, though their closeness grows steadily. As Nazi Germany tightens around their lives, Liesel joins the Hitler Youth and learns the expected salutes, marches, and routines. Rosa brings her along on laundry deliveries, and Liesel eventually handles the work herself. War makes money scarce, and one by one Rosa's customers begin canceling. Liesel keeps hoping for a letter from her mother, but when the social worker says contact has been lost, that hope becomes more painful. On Hitler's birthday, Molking prepares for celebration with flags, parades, and a public book burning. Hans's adult son, Hans Jr., visits and argues bitterly with his father, accusing him of not supporting Hitler strongly enough. Hans has already earned suspicion for painting over anti-Jewish slurs on Jewish-owned shops, and Hans Jr. sees that compassion as weakness. At the book burning, a Nazi official condemns Jews, communists, and anyone opposed to the regime. Liesel suddenly connects Hitler with what has happened to her own family. She understands that the same system being celebrated has helped destroy her home. When she tells Hans she hates Hitler, he slaps her and warns her never to say such a thing in public, not because he disagrees, but because the words could get her killed. After the fire dies down, Liesel steals another half-burned book, The Shoulder Shrug. The mayor's wife, Ilse Hermann, sees her take it. Hans discovers the stolen book, but keeps Liesel's secret. In return, he reminds her that someday she may need to keep a secret for him. Liesel is nervous around Ilse Hermann afterward, but when she finally visits the mayor's house again for laundry, Ilse invites her into a room filled with books. The library astonishes Liesel. There she begins reading on the floor, and she learns that Ilse's son, Johann, died in World War I. Liesel's apology for that loss becomes one of the first small bridges between them. While Liesel discovers the library, another story moves toward Himmel Street. Max Vandenburg, a Jewish man, hides in a dark storage room in Stuttgart. A friend brings him food, a false identity card, a map, a key, and a copy of Mein Kampf with the papers hidden inside. Max travels by train, terrified of being discovered, pretending to read the very book that represents the hatred threatening his life. Max comes to the Hubermanns because Hans once made a promise to Max's father, Erich Vandenburg. During World War I, Erich taught Hans to play the accordion and saved his life by volunteering him for letter writing duty on the day the rest of their platoon was killed. After the war, Hans returned Erich's accordion to his widow, but she told him to keep it. Hans promised he would help if the family ever needed him. Years later, after Kristallnacht, and after Max has spent 2 years in hiding, that promise is called in. Hans lets Max into the house. Rosa feeds him, and Hans explains the truth to Liesel in the basement, making her understand that Max's life depends on silence. Max sleeps for days, then begins living in the basement. The Hubermanns share their food with him, and Liesel slowly forms a friendship with him. They connect through nightmares. Hers about Werner, his about Hitler, and the family he left behind. Liesel brings Max newspapers so he can do the blank crosswords. She describes the weather to him because he cannot safely go outside. For her birthday, Max creates a handmade book by painting over pages of Mein Kampf and writing his own story on top of them. He calls it the Standover Man, and it tells of the people who have stood above him throughout his life, ending with Liesel, who stands over him not as a threat, but as a friend. As the war grows harsher, Liesel and Rudy steal food because hunger is constant. They join other children in taking apples and later help cause a delivery boy to crash so they can steal what he is carrying. Their thefts are childish and desperate, but they also show how war turns survival into moral compromise. Liesel steals books too, returning to Ilse Hermann's library through the open window. When Ilse ends Rosa's laundry service because of hard times, Liesel lashes out cruelly about Ilse's dead son, then later begins stealing books from the library instead of accepting them as gifts. Rudy struggles under the cruelty of Hitler youth leaders, especially Franz Deutscher. He is punished for defending Tommy Müller, a boy who cannot hear marching commands properly, and later he is beaten and humiliated when he refuses to answer a Nazi question. Rudy's anger grows, but so does his loyalty to Liesel. When Victor Kemmel throws Liesel's book into the river, Rudy jumps in and saves it, then asks for a kiss again. Liesel still does not give him one. At Christmas, Liesel brings snow into the basement and builds a snowman for Max. Soon afterward, Max becomes dangerously ill and falls into a coma. Death visits Himmel Street but does not take him. Liesel brings Max small presents from the outside world: a feather, a pine cone, a candy wrapper, and even a written description of a cloud. She reads to him, hoping words can pull him back. For a long time, he does not wake. Then, in March, Rosa comes to Liesel's school pretending to scold her and secretly tells her the news. Max is awake. The threat around the Hubermanns grows. Nazi officials inspect basements to see which can be used as bomb shelters, and Liesel injures herself during a soccer game so she can warn Hans and Rosa that soldiers are coming. Max hides just in time. Later, as air raids begin, the Hubermanns must leave Max alone in their house while they shelter with neighbors. During one raid, Liesel reads aloud from The Whistler, and her voice calms the frightened people in the shelter. Afterward, Frau Holzapfel, one of Rosa's enemies, asks Liesel to read to her regularly in exchange for coffee. Then a group of Jewish prisoners is marched through Mulching on the way to Dachau. Hans sees an old man collapsing in the street and gives him bread. The act is simple and deeply human, but in Nazi Germany it is dangerous. A soldier whips both the old man and Hans, and people call Hans a Jew lover. Hans realizes he has drawn attention to the house, so Max must leave. Max goes into hiding again, leaving Hans crushed with guilt. Soon the consequences widen. Hans is accepted into the Nazi party and drafted into the army. Rudy's father, Alex Steiner, refuses to let the Nazis take Rudy to a special training school and is sent away in his son's place. Both households are wounded by the war's demands. Rosa clings to Hans's accordion at night. While Rudy becomes so angry, he says he wants to find and kill Hitler. Liesel walks with him until she convinces him to turn back. Hans is assigned to an air raid unit in Essen, where he helps rescue survivors and collect bodies after bombings. He sees terrible destruction, including an old man dying in his arms. Back in Mulching, Liesel continues reading during raids and to Frau Holzapfel. Rosa eventually gives Liesel another book Max made for her, The Word Shaker. In it, Max imagines Hitler understanding the power of words and using them to control people. Against that power, a girl plants a word seed born from a tear, and a man with a hammer joins her in the tree that grows from it. The story becomes Max's tribute to Liesel and to the power of words used differently. War keeps taking pieces from everyone. Michael Holzapfel returns from Stalingrad wounded, while his brother Robert dies after losing his legs. Hans survives a truck accident after a disliked fellow soldier, Reinhold Zucker, forces him to switch seats. Zucker dies, and Hans breaks his leg. Because of the injury, Hans is sent back toward Munich. Liesel and Rosa receive the news with relief, though Rudy cannot help thinking of his own absent father. During another raid, Frau Holzapfel refuses to go to the shelter, and her son Michael is tormented by guilt for leaving her behind. She eventually comes. After the bombing ends, Liesel and Rudy see a crashed enemy plane in the woods. The pilot is dying, and Rudy places a teddy bear beside him. Death arrives for the pilot and recognizes Liesel again. Hans returns home, but peace does not last. Michael Holzapfel later hangs himself, unable to live with the weight of surviving when his brother did not. Liesel continues reading to his mother. Then, during another march of Jewish prisoners, Liesel sees Max. She runs into the parade and calls to him. He tells her he was captured on his way to Stuttgart. Soldiers order Liesel away, but she keeps returning to him, even quoting The Word Shaker. Both Max and Liesel are whipped before Rudy pulls her away. Afterward, Liesel finally tells Rudy who Max is. Overwhelmed by grief, anger, and the damage words have done in Nazi Germany, Liesel returns to Ilse Hermann's library and tears pages from a book. She later apologizes in a note. Instead of punishing her, Ilse comes to Liesel's house and gives her a blank notebook, encouraging her to write her own story. Liesel begins writing The Book Thief in the Basement, starting with Werner's death and the first book she stole in the snow. That writing saves her life. One night, bombs fall on Himmel Street before the warning sirens sound in time. Most of the neighborhood is asleep and dies instantly. Liesel survives because she is in the basement working on her book. When rescuers pull her from the rubble, she cries for Hans. She finds Rudy's body and finally kisses him. She says goodbye to Rosa and Hans, places Hans's accordion beside him, and leaves her own book behind in the wreckage. It is thrown away with the debris, but death finds it and keeps it. After the bombing, Liesel is taken in by the mayor and Ilse Hermann. She keeps the ash of Himmel Street on her skin through the funerals, then later washes herself in the river where Rudy once rescued her book. Alex Steiner returns from the war and reopens his shop, and Liesel spends time with him. After the war ends, Max finds his way back to Mulching and reunites with Liesel, giving her one of the few impossible joys left after so much loss. Death then moves to the end of Liesel's long life. She dies as an old woman in Sydney, surrounded by family and friends, but still carrying the memories of Hans, Rosa, Rudy, Werner, and Max. When death comes for her, He shows her the book he saved from the rubble many years earlier. Liesel is stunned that he has kept it and read it. Death admits that he still struggles to understand human beings, who are capable of both terrible cruelty and extraordinary kindness. In the end, he says he is haunted by humans.